We used artificial intelligence to imagine two different thinkers arguing about one question. When two groups both say the same land is theirs for different reasons, can we ever find a fair answer?
I'm from Israel. Our history and being forced to leave long ago give us the right to come back. Even if we were gone, our claim for the land is still real.
I'm from Palestina. We've always lived here, and that makes it ours. You can't take land from memory while I'm still here living on it.
This argument isn't just about who came first, but what kind of past we think should shape what happens next. Who decides where people belong? The ones who stayed, or the ones who always wanted to come back? When we use memory like a map, whose past shapes what happens now?
Let me ask something a bit hard. If a group of people kept their culture alive while living far from their home for over 2,000 years, doesn't that mean something important about their right to return? We act like only those who are there right now have the right to belong. But remembering, even from far away, also has meaning. Jewish people didn't just survive being scattered. They made their old land part of their prayers, holidays, and who they are. At every wedding, funeral, or holiday, they talked about a place they hadn't seen in generations. Isn't that kind of deep longing something important? And if so, is coming back wrong, or is it fixing something?
Longing doesn't build homes, raise kids, or feed animals. You talk about memory like it's the same as owning land. But this place, by every rock, every olive tree, has been lived in by people who never left. For generations, we built more than just dreams. We built real places, cities, schools, and strong traditions tied to the land. If faraway memories matter, what about people who've lived here all along? What about a grandmother who knows this land by heart, season after season, because she's lived it? Can memory really be worth more than living experience?
But isn't it possible that a culture can continue even while far away? The fact that Jewish people stayed a clear and unique group, even when surrounded by other cultures for centuries, shows this wasn't just an old story. It was a real, living identity. They kept their traditions and always looked back to a place that was real to them. And when they came back, it wasn't out of nowhere. The world recognized something needed to be fixed. Legally and politically, this right was supported. I'm not saying it didn't hurt anyone. But if we say only people who never left have rights, then anyone forced out long ago can never hope to come back. Is that fair?
But your return caused others to lose their homes. That's the sad part. One group's return became another group's loss. And the legal help you talk about? Big powers were making deals for their own benefit, not for justice. These lines on maps were drawn by empires, not by fairness. You say Israel brought back a people. We say it pushed one out. It's unfair to care more about feelings from far away than the lives already here. Should a child raised under the sun of this land lose their home because someone else's grandparents dreamed about it? That's not fixing the past. That's replacing someone else's present.
But maybe that whole way of thinking is part of the problem. It says one group is native and the other isn't. But history isn't so clean. Jews didn't leave only once and stay away forever. They came and went in waves through many years. If we say someone loses their right just because they left, then nobody in exile ever gets the chance to come back. But the Jewish bond wasn't just an idea. It came with its own language, prayers, and hopes, all tied to one land. Doesn't that blur the line between those who stayed and those who returned?
Just because the lines are unclear doesn't make the harm go away. Yes, history is complicated, but when Jews came back in large numbers, this land was not empty. People lived here, people who saw this land as central to their lives. The issue isn't that you loved the land, it's what happened when that love turned into action. True connection isn't just old stories. It's how you treat what's here now. If we tried to follow every ancient claim today, the world would fall apart.
So to you, only the people who never left have the right to the land? That anyone who survived far away loses all claims because they were forced out? I'm not ignoring the hurt. I see the pain, but maybe the hardest part is this. Both sides are wounded, and both believe this is home. Maybe it's not just different stories. Maybe it's two heartbreaks living in the same place.
Yes, and that's why it's so difficult. But one group came with armies and new rules while the other was pushed out and left holding house keys they couldn't use anymore. That's the difference. Being native isn't just about how long you've been here. It's also about who has the power. One side came backed by great forces, the other stayed, waiting, surviving, holding on.
So now we go in circles. One side says, we never left. The other says, we never forgot. That's the tragedy, right? Both believe that losing something gave them the right to return, but one land can't be fully home to two totally separate claims. So whose story matters more?
Stories from the past become painful when they're used to decide the future. Remembering history doesn't always mean making things fair, especially when two peoples feel the same land is theirs. What happens next will test what we really mean when we talk about going home. Can one act be both a return and a loss? Some people see the Jewish return to Israel as coming home after a long time. Others see it as the start of a great disaster for another group.
Let me ask something straight up. How can we call Zionism freedom if hundreds of thousands of Palestinians lost their homes because of it? You can't find your freedom by kicking others out. People who say the Jewish return was innocent or necessary often ignore the fact that there were already people living there. If colonization means outsiders coming in, building a new system, and taking power from the people already there, then isn't that what happened? You can talk about pain, history, and long suffering. But in the end, one group came in and another had to leave.
Now, Sanders, that view doesn't hold up. Zionism wasn't like the old empires that took land for money or power. It was a group of people, spread across the world, trying to come back to their original home after years of being attacked, especially after the Holocaust. They didn't come with soldiers or kings. They were escaping violence. Unlike other colonizers, Jews didn't have another country to go back to. Many early Jews bought land legally, often from landowners who didn't live there. And the goal wasn't to rule over someone else. It was to survive in a world that kept trying to kill them.
Sure, survival matters. But good intentions don't take away the damage. Colonizers often told themselves they were helping. The British thought they were bringing order. The French believed they were spreading knowledge. Now Zionists say they're fixing history. But what actually happened matters more than the reason behind it. If people were forced out of their villages, if laws were made to favor only one group, if others were left to suffer in refugee camps for years, how is that not colonization? Maybe the start was different, but the result, one group gaining power over another, matches the same painful pattern.
But calling Jews colonizers, when they were some of the worst victims of colonization in Europe, misses something important. You're using the language of resistance, but forgetting just how terrifying things were for Jews, and still are in many places. Yes, Palestinians suffered, no doubt. But this didn't come from Jews wanting power. It came from Jews having no other safe choice. Unlike colonizers in Africa or America who erased native ways of life, Israel brought back the Hebrew language, rebuilt the land, and reconnected with Jewish culture and identity. Sometimes trying to survive can look like taking over, but it's not the same.
Even survival has limits. If Jewish safety meant leaving Palestinians without a country, we have to ask, was that fair? Zionism may not have started like old empires, but it used their systems, like British support and international deals. Just because a people suffered doesn't mean everything they do is beyond question. Palestine wasn't open, empty land. It had people, homes, and deep roots. Those were pushed aside. Even if the damage wasn't planned, can we excuse it just because their goal wasn't to conquer?
That's exactly the painful part. The world kicked Jews out for being stateless. Then, when they tried to build a home, they were blamed for doing it. So, where were they supposed to go? Europe treated them like strangers. After 1948, many Arab countries also forced them out. Every safe exit became a trap. Israel wasn't just a dream. It was the only door left. Yes, that door hurt others when it opened. But if we say Jews could never return without doing harm, then we're asking them to stay homeless forever. That's not fairness. That's another kind of exile.
Maybe. But helping one group too late doesn't mean we can ignore the pain of the other. The Nakba, what happened to the Palestinians, wasn't just a random mistake. It was planned, carried out, and still matters today. And now, the question isn't just about the past, it's about whether the story we tell about Israel can ever change, or if holding on to that story means ignoring what really happened. Was it a safe place, or a system that removed others? A place to return to, or a place others were pushed from? This isn't just history, it still affects lives today.
Exactly. And maybe we'll never get a clear answer. Israel came from deep pain and loss, but caused more. So maybe we shouldn't try to choose only one version. The Jewish people were hurting. The Palestinians were hurt. Both things can be true. This isn't just about blame. It's about heartbreak. And maybe that's the way forward. Not silence, not shouting, but listening to both sides as real human pain.
And maybe that's the real question. If fairness can't fully take a side, can peace ever happen without someone giving up their dream? Maybe it's not just justice that brings peace. Maybe it's sharing the sadness.
Because sometimes the truth doesn't take sides. It just waits long enough for both wounds to speak. But what happens when pain becomes a weapon? That's the next story to tell. If everyone's memories really matter, why do some get ignored while others get used like weapons? When pain is used to prove who's right, whose suffering is allowed to count.
Let's stop acting like everyone's pain gets the same care. It doesn't. When people hear Holocaust, they get quiet and respectful. But if you say Nakba, half the people don't know what it is. Or they get uncomfortable. That difference isn't just about feelings. It's built into the system. Suffering has become a way to gain respect or power, and that respect isn't given to everyone. If people remember your pain, it can make your voice stronger. If they ignore it, your pain gets pushed aside. So, I wonder, can people who built their whole identity on their own suffering really accept someone else's?
Maybe the issue isn't that one kind of suffering is stronger, but that we think remembering is the same as making things fair. Of course, the Holocaust is deeply remembered. It was a planned mass killing in a way the world hadn't seen before. But remembering, it isn't just about being sad. It's about survival. Never again. For Jewish people, memory helps with staying safe. It's not about who hurts more. That doesn't take away from what Palestinians went through. But here's the twist. Memory became a kind of wall. Jewish people remember to stay alive. Palestinians remember to feel seen. Both are hurting, but in different ways.
Hurting or not, one side's story gets told at big meetings. The other side gets silenced on TV. That's not equal pain. That's unfairness. And what you just said proves my point. If memory is used like armor, then feeling for someone else is seen as a danger. People aren't saying the Holocaust didn't happen, but some use the fact that it was so unique to say other pain doesn't really matter as much. When Palestinians talk about what happened in 1948, they aren't saying, our pain is the same. They're saying, we're still hurting, and no one ever truly said, we see you. Pain that no one notices is like a ghost looking for someone to say its name.
You're right. Ghosts come back because no one listened. But here's the sad truth. Both sides are haunted. Jewish people still live with the fear of being wiped out, not just from the Holocaust, but from always being treated as outsiders for centuries. So, when pain becomes a part of who you are, it's hard to share it. It feels like giving something up. But feeling for others shouldn't mean giving up your own story. The real fight over memory isn't only between Israelis and Palestinians, it's also inside both peoples. The fear that caring about the other side's pain means forgetting your own loss. That if you cry for your neighbor, you stop honoring your own family.
That fight inside, I see it everywhere. A child in Gaza dies and someone replies, but the Holocaust? Like one person's pain cancels out another's. And it happens the other way, too, when past hurt is used to excuse violent acts today. We mix up past and present so we don't have to feel anyone else's hurt. You're right. Both sides are stuck in battles over graves. But here's what I keep thinking. If each new generation doesn't just get the land but also the pain, how do we ever stop hurting? Are we teaching kids that being a victim is part of being a good citizen?
Exactly. That's the problem under all of it. When remembering becomes a rule instead of a way to feel better, pain becomes your whole identity. And being hurt becomes something you pass down. It doesn't mean we should forget. But pain should guide us, not trap us. Real respect for the past means turning pain into space for others, not just walls around ourselves. The world doesn't need a list of who suffered the most. It needs bravery to say, your pain doesn't take away from mine. Maybe the best way to remember is to remember each other, too.
That really gets to me. But now I'm wondering, what if the stories we tell to help us heal are the same ones that keep us hurting?
And that's when everything changed. Because when you learn to protect your pain like it's your land, you forget that memory was meant to bring us closer, not tear us apart. They call it security. But is it really keeping people safe, or just controlling them? And who gets to feel safe when someone else feels trapped?
Let's not act like this is some deep question. If rockets are hitting your towns, buses are exploding, and people are getting stabbed, of course you build a wall. You lock your doors. You check who's coming in. That's not about being cruel. It's about staying alive. It's easy to talk about being kind and fair when it's not your kids in danger. The wall, the checkpoints, the cameras, they're not about politics. They're about not getting killed. Every country has the right to protect itself. So why is it a problem when Jews do it?
You call it security, but the people living under it feel like they're in a cage. You're not just locking your doors, you're locking ours too. You decide who can move, who can work, who can live freely, and then you say it's for safety. That same wall that keeps Tel Aviv safe is choking Ramallah. Checkpoints don't just slow people down, they shape their whole lives. And let's be real, this violence didn't come out of nowhere. It's what happens when people are trapped in pieces of their land and told to accept that as peace. If security just means keeping control, then call it what it is. Power hiding behind nice words.
I get the anger, but you're not taking any responsibility. If the attacks stop, the security measures stop too. It's that simple. That wall wasn't built for fun. It came after a lot of suicide bombs. No country spends that kind of money on tanks and fences unless its people are dying. And don't mix up cause and result. The occupation didn't start all this. The attacks forced us to take control. What you call domination is often just a reaction. Countries don't take chances when lives are at stake. Security is messy, but the other option is death.
The ones with power always say they're just reacting. You see fences and guns as neutral until they're used. Sure, fear makes people build walls. History shows that. But let's talk real. What gets called terrorism and what gets called defense isn't always fair. Look closely. One side has warplanes and bombs, the other throws rocks and makes cheap rockets. That's not a fair fight. It's one side slowly crushing the other, piece by piece, while calling it protection. And when people feel invisible every day, of course, they get angry.
So what? Israel should just take the walls down and hope everything's fine. Safety isn't some extra thing. It's life or death. Would you leave your kids' lives up to someone else's hope for peace? Can you really afford to? This isn't a dreamland where both sides suddenly trust each other. People are dying while we talk. History has taught Jews one harsh lesson. If we don't look after ourselves, no one else will.
But who gets to say what's life or death? When defense starts treating others like they don't matter, when every bit of safety for you means pain for someone else, fear just spreads. Real safety doesn't come from walls. It comes from respect, from giving everyone the same worth. You can build bunkers forever and still never feel safe if other people are suffering. It's not about tearing down safety. It's about changing what safety really means. If it doesn't protect everyone, it's not real safety.
So you're saying safety for just one side isn't really safety. I get that. Sounds nice. But who takes the first step? What if there's no trust left at all? Right now, both sides are full of fear. And fear doesn't go away on its own. Every new attack makes things worse. Every checkpoint makes the pain deeper. So the real question is, what does safety cost? And who's paying the price?
Exactly. Real safety isn't tanks on the street or face checks at every border. It's waking up and not wondering what will go wrong today. whether you'll be stopped, embarrassed, or told no. When occupation looks like protection, peace dies in small, everyday ways. You want real safety? Then build a future for everyone, not just barriers. Because if only one group sleeps easy at night, no one is truly safe.
If real peace means both sides feeling safe, what happens when fear is the only thing they share? In the next part, we ask, if two people's dream of the same land, is staying apart the answer? Or does it make one of them disappear? People say they want peace, but maybe trying to split the land is part of the problem. If two different groups both believe the land is their home, is having two countries really the answer, or just a way to delay a bigger fight?
Let's be honest. The idea of two countries living side by side was never real. Too much has happened. Too many settlements, walls, broken up areas, and deep mistrust. The land is now a mess of roads, fences, and control points. Do you see a real, working Palestinian country right now? It looks more like pieces of land under tight control. That's not living together. That's trapping one side. The plan for separation has slowly become a way to keep one group in charge while speaking nice words about peace. So I have to ask, are we holding on to a dead plan just to feel better?
A dead plan? That's like pretending there was ever a better option. Don't forget, making one country for everyone could easily turn into a disaster too. That could mean the end of a Jewish state, which people waited for through hundreds of years of hate, exile, and the Holocaust. The idea of two countries wasn't about being perfect. It was about keeping people safe, keeping identities alive. You see walls, but others see safety. Without some form of separation, this might not lead to peace. It might lead to some people disappearing.
But how do you protect your identity by cutting up someone else's land? You talk about Jewish safety like Palestinian lives don't matter. Every time land is taken and called growth, every checkpoint, every guard tower, it all makes the two-country idea look like a lie. What we really have is one strong state and one population under control. It's not about fighting Jewish identity. I'm asking why that identity needs fences and guns while others are kept down. Is security just another way of keeping power forever?
Power? Or just facing the truth? People build walls not because they want to, but because of what they've lived through. Explosions, attacks, fear. Israelis don't forget what happened. This is not just a debate. It's survival. Talk about giving everyone a vote sounds good, but if that means Jews lose the only place that's safe for them, it's not peace. It's payback. Trust is broken. No side feels safe letting go. That's why two countries wasn't about giving up. It was about staying alive.
But here's what you're not seeing. If some people think giving others equal rights is the same as disappearing, then there will never be peace. Calling fairness revenge just hides the truth. Maybe peace means taking real chances, not pulling away. You can't keep Palestinians in limbo forever so others can feel safe. Of course, Jewish pain should be seen, but not at the cost of keeping another people quiet and under control. That's not freedom. That's a system where one group always stays higher than the other.
But let's be real. That power imbalance is what we already have. You think risking it all for fairness sounds brave. But lives are on the line. Jews waited generations, not just for a country, but for a place where they don't have to ask permission to be. If we erase that in the name of sharing, we might lose the only safe place for them. So, yeah, the plan isn't perfect. But if we throw it away without knowing what comes next, we may lose the last bit of hope for peace. Sometimes the dream we know, even if it's broken, is better than walking into the unknown.
Maybe the sad truth is this. Both sides think they can only be free if the other one disappears. Maybe that's the lie we keep believing, that only one group can be safe, while the other stays silent. Maybe it's not about choosing one state or two, but choosing between control and respect. Maybe both sides need to give up parts of their dream so people can finally live with dignity. It's a risk. But what's the point of peace if it's built without justice?
But remember, justice without peace might just start a new kind of war. It's easy to talk about sharing and fairness when you don't have to live with the danger if it fails. Big dreams won't fix borders, and fear won't build a future. Maybe the two-country plan is falling apart, but we should be careful. If it's buried without something better to replace it, we might not just lose maps. We might lose the last hope for forgiveness too.
Sometimes you have to give up on a dream to move forward. But what if waking up from that dream leads to something even harder to live with? Can a country really be a democracy if it gives special treatment to one ethnic group? Or does that go against what democracy means? Let's look into it.
Let's stop avoiding the main question. Can Israel call itself a democracy if it clearly favors Jewish people over others? Yes, Palestinian citizens can vote, run for office, and become judges. But when the country's laws, land rules, and immigration policies are mainly built to support Jews, is that fair for others? Can that still be called a real democracy? Or is it more like a system that hides behind a democratic image while actually giving power to only one group? You can't have real equality if the basic system is built on putting one group above another. That's not democracy. It just looks like it.
This kind of criticism makes sense only if you think of democracy as some perfect idea, not real life. Like many other democracies, Israel is both a country for a nation and a democracy. France is made for French people. Poland is proud of being Polish. So why are only people upset when Israel does this? Palestinian citizens do have rights. They vote, protest, and have parties in the Knesset. The Supreme Court often goes against the government. It's not perfect, especially because of long conflict and wars, but it's still more open than many countries. Having a strong ethnic identity doesn't cancel out democracy, unless we totally change the meaning of democracy.
But you're only pointing out the few good examples, while ignoring bigger problems. Look at the nation-state law from 2018. It says only Jewish people have the right to self-rule in Israel. Arabic was made less important, and Jewish settlement is seen as a national duty. That's not a small problem. That's legal inequality. And what about the West Bank, where Jewish settlers follow one legal system and Palestinians follow a different, harsher one? That's not democracy. It's division. Showing that an Arab is a judge doesn't fix a system that's unfair deep down. Democracy isn't just about what's on paper. It's about what life is really like for people.
Wait a second. You're mixing up two different things. The West Bank isn't officially part of Israel. It's under military rule until there's a peace agreement. That's why there are two sets of laws, even if it's a bad situation. As for the nation-state law, it doesn't take rights away from non-Jews. It just confirms that Israel is a Jewish country, which has always been the case. Other countries also define themselves by a main group. Turkey is for Turks, Greece is for Greeks. Saying Israel can't do that isn't fair. The real issue is the conflict and the occupation, not the idea behind the country's creation.
But temporary rule in the West Bank has lasted more than 55 years. How long does something stay temporary before it becomes permanent? If a Palestinian kid is judged in a military court while a Jewish settler next door goes to civilian court, how is that equal? You talk about diversity, but if the system is set up to keep one group in power, it's not really diversity. It's control. A real democracy isn't about nice appearances. It's about how the system is built and run. And if the system puts one identity above all others, it's not a democracy. It's a divided system that's unfair on purpose.
You're judging everything based on some perfect version of democracy, which doesn't exist, especially in a place always at risk of war. No democracy is flawless. Most are shaped by their majority group. What matters is whether they protect minorities too. And Israel does a lot more for its minorities than many of its neighbors. Just calling it an ethnocracy ignores the real legal rights Arabs have in Israel. You can say things aren't great or that the system is under stress, but it's not all fake. Saying it's just acting democratic is too simple and misses the truth.
Let's talk about land. More than 90% of public land is controlled by an organization that doesn't lease land to non-Jews. That's not an accident. It's part of the plan. If a citizen can't get equal land, education, funding, and political power, then what does their citizenship mean? These legal rules and systems weren't mistakes. They were made to keep things unequal. I'm not asking for a perfect world, just fairness. And if one group always comes first in the system, that's not fairness. That's an unfair structure that was planned to be that way.
But maybe we need to rethink what democracy really requires. Does a country lose its democracy just because it connects deeply with its majority's history and identity? Israel isn't saying it's perfect. It's dealing with conflict, deep trauma, and trying to protect itself. Focusing on Jewish identity isn't about being better. It's about staying alive. Jews went without a country for a long time and faced terrible treatment. Creating a country that centers Jewish life was about survival, not hate. Saying it has to be either a democracy or an ethnocracy is too simple. The truth is, it's a lot messier than that.
That's easy to say when you're on the side with rights and power. For Palestinians, those tensions show up every day as problems with land, school, housing, travel, and legal rights. Saying these are just temporary problems in a democracy is not enough. The real question is, can a democracy still be called one when not everyone is treated equally? Maybe here, more than anywhere else, we should judge democracy not by how free some people are, but by how restricted others still are.
So what really makes a democracy? What it says in its laws, or which people it puts first? Think carefully, because the answer might change what you thought freedom really means. People always talk about peace. But what if this whole peace process isn't actually meant to stop the fighting? What if it's just a nicer way to handle the fighting without really fixing the problem?
Let's be honest. If real peace was the goal, why are we still stuck in talks after so many years, with nothing really changing? We've had plans, deals, leaders shaking hands, but the occupation is still here. New settlements are still being built. More checkpoints show up. So is this really about peace or just control made to look nice? Is it just a truce with good marketing? Because it looks more like a system that accepts unfairness, not one trying to fix it.
But what's the other option? A sudden collapse. You can't fix a place full of fear, pain, and history in a day. Peace takes time. You can't just press a button and get justice. If you try to change everything too fast, it can all fall apart. What you call managing conflict might be the only safe way forward when two hurt groups are involved. Moving slowly doesn't mean giving up. It means trying to stay alive.
No, that's just an excuse. You're confusing delay with diplomacy. The longer things take, the more it helps the side with power. Those checkpoints aren't going away. The new settlements aren't waiting for permission. Every year we talk without fixing things isn't harmless. It just lets the powerful keep changing the facts. When one side is suffering, you don't just pause time. You stop the suffering. So when you say going slow is smart, I say it's just doing nothing and calling it strategy.
But if you tear everything down too fast, you end up with chaos. Look at history. When people make agreements without safety for both sides, those deals fall apart. Justice doesn't help if it brings more war. If peace is broken, it brings anger and more fighting. Yes, this process isn't perfect. Sometimes it's even unfair. But if we throw the whole thing away, it could bring more harm than good. You call it being stuck. I call it a careful walk between danger and disaster. Maybe it's slow, but burning it all down won't make peace come faster.
But maybe this peace process isn't really about peace at all. Maybe it's about making injustice look normal. Slow progress becomes no progress. Temporary becomes forever. Just look at Gaza. Look at the West Bank. If these talks aren't leading to freedom, who's gaining from all this? It becomes something ugly. People sit around discussing how to manage oppression, not end it. If the talks help keep things unfair, then aren't they part of the problem too?
Not if they're all we have left between talking and total breakdown. Sometimes talks don't fix things. They just create space for something better to grow later. You want perfect peace right now. But real life is messy. Peace means both sides staying close enough, long enough to see they can live together. You can't make people forgive like it's a rule. It takes time and has to grow naturally. If one side forces it, it just becomes revenge all over again.
But what if time isn't fair either? What if more time just helps the stronger side? That's what no one wants to admit. Time itself becomes a weapon. The longer it goes, the more the stronger side wins. So when a peace process has no real fairness, it becomes just another kind of fighting, with no guns but still causing harm. And we wouldn't call that peace anywhere else, would we?
That's why the real question is, who gets to say what peace means? Because if one side's idea of justice feels like the other side disappearing, nothing really works. You're probably right that this process was never built to truly fix things. Maybe it's just trying to stop the bleeding, not cure the wound. But until both sides have equal power, stopping the bleeding might be all we can do.
And that's the scariest part. What if the system got really good at holding things together but forgot to fix the pain?
And that's just the beginning, because the next question asks something even bigger. Can peace talks ever be fair when powerful countries choose sides with money and weapons? Everyone says they want peace in the Middle East, but no one trusts the people trying to make it happen. Can there really be peace if the supposed neutral helper is also taking sides?
Let's be honest, world peace talks keep failing because the people leading them pretend to be fair when they're not. When the U.S. says it wants peace, but also sends billions in weapons to one side, how is that neutral? For any peace talk to work, people need to trust the middle person. But how can Palestinians trust someone who supports their suffering? This isn't real diplomacy. It's just a show. And it's a show where real people are dying.
You call it a show. I call it being smart. It's true the U.S. isn't neutral, but being fair and being effective aren't always the same. You don't need perfect people to make peace. You need people with power. The U.S. supports Israel, so Israel listens to them. That powerful connection is exactly why America can bring Israel to the table. You want peace talks led by someone with no interest in the fight? That sounds nice, but in real life, peace needs leverage, and only the U.S. has that kind of power right now.
So you're saying peace only matters if it helps the one making the deal? That's the problem. If the middle person is already taking sides, they're not really helping. They're managing the situation. And Palestinians don't want to be managed. They want fairness. They want their rights respected, not just better treatment under an unfair system. You call it influence. I call it being part of the problem. Real peace starts with treating people like people, not just pieces on a chessboard.
I'm not saying fairness doesn't matter. I'm saying fairness without power is just talk. You want justice? Sure. But show me a world group that actually gives it fairly. The UN? Sometimes people with terrible human rights records are in charge there. The idea that some nice, fair outsider is going to show up and fix things, that's a dream. It may not feel good, but the truth is, without the U.S., talks don't go anywhere. Sometimes, an imperfect helper is the best we've got.
But those helpers keep helping in ways that only make things worse. Why do we keep calling it a peace process when every time the power gap gets bigger? More land taken, more control on movement, more pain. If this is what moving forward looks like, what does going backward mean? History shows that people who are suffering don't get justice from the same systems that benefit from their silence. Palestinians aren't asking for something perfect, just something fair. Real peace starts with accountability, not secret deals.
Accountability sounds nice, but again, who's going to make it happen? Just saying stuff doesn't change the world. The world runs on interests, not good wishes. Israelis are scared for their survival. They trust the U.S. because it has real power and protects them. Without America in the mix, talks may not happen at all. I'm not saying the U.S. is flawless, but sometimes a path with problems is still the only way forward. Because if we wait for everything to be fair first, there may never be peace.
But maybe that's the problem. Peace without fairness isn't real peace. It's just a pause in the fighting. Real peace should challenge power, not protect it. If the peace process lets those in control stay in control without change, then it's not really peace. It's just pretending. If the countries trying to help really want to be trusted, they need to be willing to take risks too. Otherwise, they're just dressing up control in nice words.
And yet, funny enough, it's that kind of control that sometimes makes peace talks even possible. You call it pretending. Maybe it's really keeping things stable. Maybe not perfect, but sometimes needed. The truth is, every peace deal asks someone to give up part of their dream. Real peace happens when people admit the world isn't fair, but still try to create something better anyway.
But if everyone's better world still depends on someone else staying powerless, can peace ever be big enough to hold everyone's truth? People always talk about finding solutions, but what if solving the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians isn't really what either side wants most?
Let's be honest, neither side is truly fighting for peace. They want to be heard and understood. One side wants to survive, to live without fear of being destroyed. The other wants fairness, to live with respect and without being put down. That's why all the peace talks feel fake, like a show. They don't really deal with what people are feeling deep inside. So the real question is, do people want peace, or do they want to be right?
You're right about that. But let's look deeper. One side is scared of losing everything, the other is tired of being ignored. These are not just political wishes. They are about who people are and how they want to live. So when a solution just hides the problems and calls it peace, that's not real peace. What people really want is to feel respected, be remembered, and share power fairly. Without that, we're not fixing anything. We're just pretending.
But aren't you asking for too much then? If everyone sees their pain as the most important and wants everything fixed before they can talk, then nothing will ever change. History doesn't say, sorry. Old empires won't undo what they did. So what do you really want? So perfect justice with no give and take, total freedom with no limits? Two groups can't both fully rule the same land. Someone has to give something up.
But that's the trick. Calling it a compromise when the two sides never started equal. You're asking people who've lived under control and separation to accept half a life and pretend it's okay. What you call being realistic, they see as giving up, but trying to sound polite. And the truth is, peace that's unfair won't last. Everyone wants an ending, but sometimes the pain can't heal until the truth is really seen.
So you're saying we can't move forward unless we face the past honestly. That makes sense. Maybe that's why so many peace talks fail. One side shows paperwork and plans, the other brings deep loss and history. How can they meet in the middle? If peace means forgetting, maybe we're chasing the wrong thing.
Exactly. Peace isn't just writing things down. It's not just living side by side. It's a deep change. It's Israelis asking, did our safety come with someone else's suffering? And Palestinians asking, do we need more than just getting land back? Do we need to be seen and accepted? You can't erase history with bombs. You can't make someone forget with fences. Real peace isn't about deals. It's about change. When people stop needing to win the whole story and start trying to share it.
That hits deeper than any news story. Maybe what we really need isn't a new map, but a new way to remember. And now I'm thinking, maybe both sides have to question the story they've been told their whole lives before anything new can happen.
That kind of question might stay even after the fighting stops, because memory isn't just what happened, it's how we see ourselves. And unless that changes, what are we really trying to fix? What if ending the fight isn't really about peace, but about being seen? Not being seen for your land or your history, but for your pain, your loss, and the parts of yourself you don't want to admit are also in the other side.
Let's be honest, maybe peace can't happen. Not because people don't want it, but because everyone wants justice their own way. Think about it. Every time someone tries to fix things, it fails because it makes someone feel like they're losing who they are. The problem isn't that people won't meet halfway, it's that meeting halfway feels like disappearing. One side sees safety, the other sees giving up. Maybe we need to stop thinking peace means a perfect fix. Maybe the real answer is to admit no one gets everything, but still choose to keep going.
But what if just surviving feels like winning to someone? This isn't just about land or who people are. It's about feeling like a human. Saying no one gets it all may sound fair, but that assumes everyone started from the same place. They didn't. One side rules, the other lives under control. One leads, the other mourns. So calling it sharing or fair might sound nice, until you see that for some people, compromise feels like being erased. That's not peace. That's quiet pain.
That makes sense, but chasing perfect justice from the past, the heart, or some big idea of what's fair can also destroy you. If you expect full payback for what happened to your grandparents, your grandchildren may always live in anger. Look around. People aren't just fighting over land. They're fighting over stories and who's right. But stories don't go away easily. Maybe the deepest problem isn't what happened, but that people can't let go unless someone else gets punished. That starts to feel less like justice and more like revenge passed down through time.
No, Sakes, that's called memory with meaning. The other choice is to forget, and that's its own kind of harm. People are afraid not only that history might repeat itself, but that it'll be lost before anyone even admits what happened. When pain isn't named, it grows. It turns into hate and lies. That's what makes this fight different. It's not just about the future, it's about who gets to tell the past. If the world tells victims to forgive without being seen or heard, that's not peace. That's just silence. And silence doesn't heal, it controls.
So then what? Do we keep fighting just so we feel heard? Just for names on tombstones and to change school books? There has to be another way. Not forgetting, but remembering in a better way. Don't use memory to hurt. Don't use it to build walls. Use it to try to understand. Understanding doesn't mean both sides are the same, but it means we stop for a moment. If one side waits for perfect justice before healing and the other hides behind their hurt instead of being honest, we stay stuck. You don't fix things by hiding the truth, but holding on to it selfishly doesn't help either.
Exactly. Being recognized isn't the end. It's the start. It's when we stop fighting over whose story is more real and find space where both stories live, even if they're different. Maybe peace isn't about fixing everything. Maybe it's when both sides know justice will never be perfect, pain will always remain, but still choose not to hurt each other anymore. That takes something deeper than rules. It takes heart, to feel pain that isn't yours, to carry truths that change how you see yourself. That's not politics, that's being human.
And maybe that's the twist. If being seen is where we begin, not where we end, then we've been asking the wrong question. Not who wins or how does it end, but who do we need to become to even imagine a way forward?
And maybe that's the real truth. Peace doesn't come when both sides are happy, but when both are still hurting and still choose not to treat the other like less than human just to feel better. Being seen is the pain. Being seen is the beginning. And maybe that's where peace begins, even if it never truly ends.